Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.
To tip off this NBA season on FanDuel, you can choose your own rewards, which means you can play your game any way you want.
I get to choose my rewards?
Yep.
Great! Now, excuse me while I lock in.
All customers choose your own reward right now in the FanDuel app. 21 plus and present in select states. 18 plus in Kentucky. Opt-in required. Rewards are non-withdrawable. Restrictions apply, including bonus and token expiration, leg requirement, and max wager amount. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Real people making bold moves. Unforgettable journeys into life's next chapter. This is the Second Act Podcast.
Every day is a new chance. Mindset on a new path. Anything is possible. Any limit I surpass. Everything is in my grasp. I got tunnel vision with a pickaxe. Life is more fun when you live like there's no strings attached.
John Ballinger, welcome back.
Hey, Michael. Man, it's good to be back. It's good to be recording with you. Not as cool as recording in person like we did on our last podcast, but still even great. It's great to see you and be reunited and have a great conversation ahead of us. So I'm really looking forward to this show. How are you doing?
I'm going to use your word, phenomenal. I'm doing phenomenal these days, John. And I don't know if that's a word that comes out of the Marine Corps. It's just specific to John Ballinger in terms of the everyday today.
Probably specific to me.
Okay. All right. But it's interesting you bring up the in-person. I think back on all the stories of reinvention that we've had on our show. We're 50 plus stories now. And it's just been an incredible journey over the last couple of years, hearing those stories of reinvention and connecting with people all over the world. I think we're 3 or 4 continents now. We've recorded with individuals, and doing the in-person was a different experience. It was really cool. But that can't always work out just because of people's busy lives and the things that they're doing each and every day. And so we're able to connect through this way and allow people to tell their stories for everyone to listen to. Today's story of reinvention is certainly not going to disappoint. I'm super excited about the individual we're going to introduce. Incredible background, incredible journey, and also Yellow Jacket. Go Jackets.
Hey, before you introduce him, Michael, man, it's amazing that we're interviewing this guest because I heard a quote this weekend that I was incredibly inspired by, and I think it might be summed up in this episode. But the quote is, always be a first-rate version of yourself instead of a second-rate version of somebody else. So somebody said that to me this weekend. I was going over the last couple of years of change and, difficult seasons and some success and some loss. And they said, man, but are you being yourself? Are you doing the things that you set out to do? And I said, yeah.
Unequivocally.
Absolutely, I am. And that's the quote they gave me. And it just stuck. And reading the bio of our next guest, I think I would say that it's going to sum up his life up to this point as well. But yeah, why don't you, I didn't mean to jump in with that, but I think it's going to fit pretty well.
I think it's a perfect segue introducing our guest today. I'm humbled to introduce our guest, Ron Johnson, from leading U.S. Army engineers around the world to transforming NBA officiating and mentoring future innovators. Ron's career is a testament to purpose-driven leadership. Over more than 2 decades in uniform, he rose to become Deputy Chief of Engineers for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, directing global operations and overseeing $18 billion in reconstruction initiatives in Iraq. After retiring as Major General, Ron took his leadership philosophy to the NBA where, as the league's first senior vice president of referee operations, he redefined the culture of excellence, accountability, and performance across professional officiating. Today, as chief of staff and senior vice president for strategic initiatives for Georgia Tech and a professor of the practice in the School of Industrial Engineering, Ron brings those same principles to the executive leadership team and in the classroom. Dr. Johnson has the proven reputation of a leader with the mindset and tools to lead with integrity and vision. As the 2025 Black Engineer of the Year, he is a dedicated public servant who continues to champion education, workforce development, and community advancement through his board service and philanthropic commitments. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Wow.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That is impressive. You could read just the first paragraph, decades in uniform. That alone sets you apart, sir. So thank you for being on the show.
Ron, we typically rewind the clock a little bit just for context for folks to get to know you and get to know your story and how it all began. And then we start to unpack that as the timeline unfolds. So we'd love to go back in time a little bit and learn a little bit from your childhood, some of the important things that shaped who you are today and that still remain an influence in your life.
Sure, absolutely. So the thing you can't learn about me reading that bio, because I guess we don't write them like that, is, I'm the product of Chicago's West Side. I'm the product of a single parent, welfare supported home. I think my grandparents did more raising of me than my mom did. Didn't know my dad. I think I met him once when he was released from Joliet prison. He came by the house, patted me on the head, and my mom told me it was my dad. I never saw him again. So I think those roots are very important. And when I go out and speak to young kids, I kind of use that example in the third person. And then I end the story by telling them, and now I'm standing here before you as whatever, just to inspire young kids to understand that it doesn't always matter where you come from. It's where you're trying to go. And for me, I think where I was trying to go was just be excellent in the classroom, because that's how I got my positive strokes from everybody. My mom would get my report card and embarrass me by showing all the neighbors and running around the apartment building we were living in. It was kind of embarrassing at the time, but inspiring as well. From the Chicago's West Side as a single parent product, and going to a great high school in Chicago, Lane Tech High School. One of the most famous attendees was Johnny Weissmuller, the first Tarzan. His name's still in our swimming pool. All male school that I had to test to get into. Had to take public transportation to get there. I think that was where I started to see what my future could be through junior ROTC and a warrant officer that I didn't like at all.
It's there's so much to really drill into there, Ron, with your upbringing. And I recall from our initial conversation before we kicked this podcast off, this was maybe a month or so ago, trying to line this up, you had mentioned something, if I recall correctly, about some of these circumstances that you had to deal with in your youth and your perseverance through some of this. And there were moments of doubt either by you or from others, and your conviction to persevere and accomplish what you had set out to accomplish. Was that from your grandparents, or was that from friends, or was that sort of intrinsic motivation that you had? Maybe a combination of all of it? Because it is hard, especially if everyone's not at the same starting line. What were the factors that allowed you to push through?
So it's sort of both. Watching my grandfather, who worked for Chicago Park District, he's a guy that went around with a trash bag and a stick with a nail on it, picking up trash in the park, and watching how he and my grandmother interacted when he would come home and she'd have some water for him to put his feet in, and they'd have I'm watching this from a distance. I'm really young watching it, so I don't appreciate it, or didn't appreciate it then, but as I got older, I started to appreciate it. And then the other side, the negative side, was I'm often inspired by people telling me what I can't do. I think people would call that having a chip on your shoulder.
Yep.
I don't know what I would call it. I don't even know why I was like that, but playing follow the leader, twirling off a second story buildings and people saying, "Oh, you can't do it." I did it, or doing some trick on a trampoline probably wasn't good style, but I'll do it. I'll try it. Just crazy stuff like that, and then not necessarily believing in myself or knowing where I wanted to go, but somehow knowing that I was a pretty good student and knowing that if I worked really hard academically, that it could lead me to this thing called college. Didn't really know much about it because I think my brother was the first one to go to college, but he stayed like a year and left, and so I was the first graduate in my family. And then I think I told you the story about the junior ROTC instructor who I was a top cadet in my junior ROTC my senior year, largest ROTC unit in the whole city of Chicago, probably in the country. It was a brigade level. Most ROTCs were battalion or below. We had a whole brigade. I was a brigade commander, and the military instructor said, "Hey, you're a pretty good cadet. You should think about going to West Point." And I said, I'm West Side guy. Like West Point's for punks. Guys like me don't go to West Point." And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "If you don't think you can make it, then maybe you shouldn't go." I did not know what he was doing at the time, but now I do. And I took him up on that, and I regretted it for a whole year as a plebe. And then after I figured out what he was doing, it just worked well for me. So I would say, and I think I said this before, more things happened to me than I made happen for myself. I always strive to be the best at whatever it is I was doing, and I figured the rest would take care of itself.
I kind of struggle with that, Ron, when you say I think more things happen to me than I made happen myself. But in your second, the follow-up comment behind that is I strive to be the best version of myself and everything else just fell in line. It it actually to me sounds like everything worked out because of the seeds you planted, because of who you were initially. And then everything fell in line because that habit pattern was started early on. I know that growing up, West Side Chicago without a father can lead a lot of people down a different path than you. So I'm curious, were you surrounding yourself obviously you had your grandparents to look at, as role models, but as far as your friends and the community that you held, was it a similar dynamic amongst your friends? Were they coming from fatherless communities as well? And were you guys banding together saying, "Hey, we're gonna just excel," or were you an outlier in that?
Yeah, that's now you're really taking me back, but it sticks in my head. So I would say this. Probably the second year I was at West Point, and I would come back home. Every year I'd come back home, one of my friends would be gone, addicted to drugs, in prison or something like that. So the friends that I really started to form were when I was in high school, which was not in my neighborhood. And oh, by the way, you made me think of another point. I didn't know I was a single parent product because all of my friends were single parent products, typically a mom, except one couple friends, they had their mom and dad at home. I would go there and get my haircuts in the basement of that house. The funny thing is I never saw mom and dad together. So it was a normal life for me to be a single parent household guy led by a mom. I think my grandparents were really the secret to keeping me on the straight and narrow. And then I always tell my son, he's 36 years old, I told him when he was little, I said, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future." So you sort of hit on a point because the friends I made in high school were the type of young men, mostly men, and then I think Lane Tech became co-ed my senior year, were going places. As a matter of fact, the whole time I was at West Point, there were at least 3 to 4 guys in every class at West Point from my high school. So that's an anomaly, I think. So I think it was my high school friends and the activities I participated in, junior OTC and Chief Warrant Officer retired, the former Donald M. Lesh, who set a path of bricks for me to walk on, and I just didn't know what he was doing until later. I had the honor of presiding over his funeral on 13 February 2019. I remember that because my son was born on the 13th of February. And so from the time of knowing this guy, having this very strong relationship with him after he tricked me, where this guy was like a father to me to his burial, we were close all those years. So I would say I'm not saying that I didn't work hard to get where I am. I would say my reputation, my standard of excellence, my drive to say, "Hey, RJ's initial's gonna be on this, so it's gotta be the very best it can be," that set me up for success every time.
Love it.
So all of these positive influences and pairing that with a chip on your shoulder or some other version of that expression has led you into West Point and then into a career of service in the Army. Help us understand that and what was the in West Point and then going into the Army. What allowed you to have the mindset to stay committed on that journey of a service-based career and leader in that part of your life?
Yeah. So I did not go to West Point to have a career in the United States Army. A lot of people do. I was not one of them. I went to West Point. It's a great education. I figured, okay, now I have a 5-year obligation. I'll do this 5 years. And that's why I went Corps of Engineers and not armor, because maybe this leadership thing isn't made for me. And so then it was 5 years, then it was 10 years, then it was 20 years, then it was 30 years. Then I woke up one day, it was 32 years, like, holy smoke, that was fun. And the thing that kept me there was, I joined the Army at a time when not all of our officers were college grads. Not all of our NCOs were highly educated and high school grads. Matter of fact, all of our soldiers weren't high school grads. It was a different Army. It was under draft. It was not all volunteer. And while most people found that like horrible, here I had these young men in Germany far away from home that looked like me, who had come from a background that I came from, that thought, well, this is too hard for me. And I could tell them like, don't tell me that. We're from the same place. We could do this. Like you just got to push yourself. And that was exciting for me. And I love doing it. And every time I thought I knew something, then I'd move to a new job. Then I would know something. And then I kept learning and kept growing and kept being challenged. And there was never a time when I didn't feel like I was being challenged. And that was exciting to me. And to be able to make a difference through my presence, through my example, through my leadership, both through hard times and good times, and then people sort of staying in touch with you over the years, that's extremely exciting. It's like having a son. My son's 36 years old. We're closer today than we were when he was 2 months old. But that's just the way it sort of worked out. That's kind of the way I do what I do, and I loved it. I loved it, and I would have not left the Army, but there comes a point, every general officer will tell you this, where you'll get that phone call from the number 2 guy in the Army, called the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, that says, "Ron, we've run out of things for you to do." I was the number 2 engineer in the Army. They picked the number 1 guy who was already a 3-star, and they said
Okay.
that we have nothing else for you to do. It's time for you to retire. And I was like, Roger. And it was the best thing that could happen, because I tell this story. I said, I had my first speech. A recruiting battalion asked me to come and speak at their annual conference in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I went from New York to Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's the first time someone introduced me with my new MBA title. And I stood in front of that mic and I said, man, I am so glad that the Army didn't see the talent in me to promote me to 3-star. And I could sense people like, okay, here's this whining general officer getting ready to grind an axe. And then I leaned forward and I said, I've done the math. I've done the math. And if the Army would have selected me to be a 3-star, it would have taken me 3 years to earn what I've earned in the NBA this year.
Wow.
And the audience just sort of went, wow, kind of fell out of their seats. And that was an important moment for me to appreciate the value that serving in the NBA brought to me.
That's amazing.
Ron, your story is another endorsement to a line of thinking I have that a lot of times, almost most of the time, that the best things happen because other things don't happen.
Yes.
And our audience hears stories of reinvention and what are perceivably setbacks only to turn into really amazing second acts to persevere and try new things and develop in ways you never could have imagined.
I think one of the things that and I don't want to gloss over this, one of the things that's important to me is when I always talk to young service members, they think, wow, it must have been so easy for you to transition as a lieutenant colonel in 20 years. You had it all figured out. And I said, I to this day say transitioning out of the Marine Corps for me was one of the hardest things to do for the whole host of reasons that you can identify. You know, your identity is in the uniform and the title you leave, and all these responsibilities and are bestowed upon you, and then you leave, and then the hardest thing to do the next day is pick out what you're going to wear, right? I would say I would look onto you as some of those young enlisted service members look onto me and say, "Oh, it must have been easy. You had it all figured out. The day you left, it was, you had a plan." But I'm guessing that might not be the case. But can you tell me about that transition out of the Army after 32 years?
Yeah, you probably guessed really wrong because so I was very deliberate. I was the aide de camp to the Secretary of the Army as a lieutenant colonel. And then another Sec Army came in, a West Point grad, and he asked me to come back to be his executive officer. So I was always on the side of being like an aide to the CEO of the Army, like two of them. And so I got to experience some things there. And what I decided to do as a lieutenant colonel, post battalion command, I decided, wow, this is a lot. And one of the things I'm going to do, should I get promoted and get these sort of people working for me, is I am never going to get used to what these people do for me. I was very deliberate about that. As a matter of fact, it was Jesus, just last week, I was arriving at a hotel for a board meeting. The guy comes out and he wants to grab my bag. And I always tell him, no, I'll carry my own bag because I don't want to get used to it. I've said that so many times, but I was very deliberate because I knew the trappings. The other story I would tell you is General Fred Gordon, who just passed away a couple months ago. He was the chief of public affairs for the Army. But before that, he was the commander of the military district of Washington. He told me this story one day. He runs out of the Pentagon. He's standing outside, and he's standing outside because he's waiting for his driver to drive him over to Capitol Hill because he was commander of the military district of Washington. It took him like 10 minutes standing there to realize, oh crap, I'm my driver. I don't have that. I don't have that driver anymore. And he, all those stories that you get caught up in. And the other advantage I had, John, is the Army Corps of Engineers, 38,000 people. I don't know how many there are today, about that many, but only 600 of those people are active duty soldiers.
Oh, wow.
The rest are all civilians. And before that, I commanded the Installation Management Agency, which are mostly civilians except for the garrison commanders. And so I had 4 or 5 years of really good experience of leading not just soldiers, but civilians, because it's a little different style of leadership that you have to employ. And the other part of it, and I catch grief for this, like I've been wearing pocket squares and fancy socks for a long time, even on active duty. I wasn't a GQ guy, but I always kind of knew how to dress, so it was not hard for me to figure out what was going to wear. As a matter of fact, I was ready to wear something else the next day. Although I would still wear that uniform. We'll do First Responders Day football game. I'll be wearing my uniform, and it still fits. after I retired in '08. Guess it's been 17 years.
Yeah. I love that response. And, I know that a lot of individuals who are very deliberate about the last couple of years that they're in service and really plan that exit, um, a lot of them have great success. A lot of them also realize um, that success doesn't come in the way that they planned it out to. And, that being in the military, you always know that no plan survives first contact. And it's a eye opener when, a lot of these transitioning service members go to get out, and the first thing they do after putting on the boots for 20 years, 25, 32 years, whatever it is, they they find that the first job that they took isn't going to be the next one they have for the rest of their lives, and it can throw them off balance. And so, I think it's important for those of the listeners that are planning that transition to just know it's okay to start early and start putting in those thoughts and the plans, but it may not work out, but don't give up.
Yeah, and there are lots of resources out there now that weren't there when we transitioned. I know there's an organization, there's Vetlana, there's a 4Block, which is this organization that's around the country that does these very deliberate veteran transition programs, and everybody should take advantage of those because it is different. It is, and higher ed is even more so.
All these patients complaining they can't get their medicines. Insurers and PBMs are often owned by the same giant company, so middlemen, like me, decide what medicines you can get and how much you pay. But don't worry, if your prescription gets denied, we know another one that works for us. I mean, you.
Washington should stop PBMs and insurers from driving up drug costs. Learn more at phrma.org/insurer costs. Paid for by Pharma.
Oh, sorry, Michael, I derailed the conversation. We were getting
No, it was a
into-
great question. It was a great
Yeah.
question. And it actually set things up very well to talk about. You were just saying, I don't know where things are going to lead. And I think before we took that detour, Ron was talking about how he didn't know his career was going to lead into NBA referee operations. So I think it was a perfect side road there, John, for us to
Yeah.
get to that point. And we'd love to hear, so you didn't get the job in the Army, Ron. So you were like, all right, what's next? And NBA referee operations appeared before you and was the next thing. So share a little bit for us and our audience about that, your mindset, and like,
Sure.
this sounds cool. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so my retirement ceremony was 31 March 2008, and at that time, I decided I was gonna do no interviewing up until I retired because I saw former deputy chiefs of engineers that couldn't, they had to recuse themselves for all the contracts and stuff we had to sign. So I didn't want to do that. So 31 March 2008, at my retirement ceremony, I said, I don't know what I'm doing next. I have no clue, but I am sure in my future I will be teaching calculus or leadership at some institution of higher learning. I knew that because I'd done that before at West Point and I enjoyed it. Fast forward, I'm on the 3rd of April, I'm interviewing with the president or one of the companies of Lockheed Martin. That company branch off is now called Leidos. So I interviewed at this
Yep.
company because when I was at Black Engineer of the Year in, I don't know, 2004, I met this woman backstage who was the president of that one of those 4 companies, and she said, General, you're not going to be in the Army forever. When you retire, I would like for you to come work for me. And I just left it at that. So 4 days later, I was in that office interviewing to be VP of Performance Excellence for Lockheed Martin. I'm an industrial engineer, operations research guy. I could do math. I could math model things that don't need math modeling. And so I got an offer. I'm sitting at home waiting to start work. I had this terminal leave, like 60 days. So I was going to start work 1 July. So sometime in May, I come home. There's a note on the kitchen countertop from my son that says, hey, the NBA commissioner wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay, yeah, real funny. We've been watching the playoffs. He's a joker. I'm a joker. So he gets home and goes, "No, Dad, this lady called and said the commissioner wants to talk to you." Flashback,
Is this David Stern?
David Stern.
Okay.
Flashback, 19 September 2006. The chief of staff of the Army calls me and says, his office calls and says, the chief would like you to go speak to the NBA rookie class at IBM University in New York. So I go do it. I have a great time. It was really cool. I met JJ Redick. I said some things to him that ruined his first season as a rookie because I was really saying, I hope Duke sucks this year, but God received it as Orlando, and Orlando did suck that year. And so I didn't think anything of it. And then May 2008, I get this phone call. The commissioner, David Stern, invites me to New York because he has this idea he wants to talk to me. I'm like, first of all, how did you get my number? And why are you calling me? So they invite me and my son to the playoffs. I think we did LA and we did Boston. My son is very easy to influence when it comes to basketball. I still don't know I'm being interviewed until the fifth visit. And David Stern says, okay, here's my idea. I didn't know about the Donaghy scandal. I heard some about it, but I knew no details. David Stern said, I want to create a new department and I want you to lead that department. And at that moment, I told him no, because how am I going to lead a bunch of professional referees? And I've never done that. I haven't worn a t-shirt, so how can I do it? And he got very animated, said some words that I can't repeat here. I asked him to let me think about it over the weekend. He let me do that. I came back home to Virginia. I spoke to a mentor of mine, retired four-star Larry Ellis. He lives here in Atlanta now. And he said, Ron, you'll always be an engineer. I think this is once in a lifetime opportunity. I think you should do it. And so I called David Stern that Monday morning. I told him, okay, fine, I'll do it. And it was a good it was a good decision for me. It allowed me to do some things that I probably allowed me to do some math I never would have done. So
Amazing. And this was a position that never existed before you.
Never existed before. They never had a separate department. And oh, by the way, I guess David Stern had stayed in the room when I spoke to these rookies. I thought he introduced me and left, but apparently he stayed in the room.
So Ron, in the thinking and process of accepting this job and then doing the job that is the first of its kind in the history of the NBA, what is one thing about that whole experience that you wish people knew, but no one has ever thought to ask you?
Yeah. So what I decided to do is, okay, how am I going to contribute something to this very important effort, right? It's about two teams competing. It's a fair competition. So there's 5-on-5, and it shouldn't be 8-on-5 it's referees should not determine the outcome of a game. The NBA has so much data on every call that's ever been made. They have video evidence of it. So I decided I'm going to zoom in on this data and I'm going to use this data in a way that's never been used before to manage the outliers because, I mean, people miss calls, right? It's a fast
Yep.
game. With football, referees throw their flags and they get together, have a cup of coffee, pick the flag up and say no call. But in basketball, you can't do that. It moves too fast. And so I was able to really kind of use this data and there's a caution here. I'm using the data, I'm providing feedback to the referees and the supervisors of the referees without showing the data, without leaning too much on the data because it's just data, right? It's
Sure.
just data. And so you don't want, because I learned in the military that if you push a standard that's tied to a number, you may get unintended consequences because people will maybe do things that are immoral or lacking integrity to get to that number. That's not what I wanted. I just wanted to improve the referee's ability to make the call. So I did not know all of that data was there, and so I used that data and the way we evaluate referees. I went around the league. Whenever I traveled to a game, I do a town hall with season ticket holders, and I would brief them on how we evaluate these referees. And
That's
to a
cool.
person, people would always walk up and say, we had no idea that they were
Yeah,
scrutinized like
sure.
that. And it gained some respect and appreciation, not love, appreciation for NBA, WNBA, and D League referees.
Very cool.
And I'll also add, it's a sexy job to have, but I don't miss sort of the scrutinizing environment. Everyone's an expert, all the owners, all the head coaches,
Yeah,
the president of basketball operations. It's a tough job for those officials to be in that court making those tough calls.
yeah, absolutely.
Ron, can I ask you what is something that you created or came up with that you think is a lasting legacy for your time as vice president of referee operations?
Yeah, that's an easy one. So if you look at the NBA.com webpage and every morning now, you can find out who the referee crews are. So when I arrived at the NBA, one of the things that I guess Donaghy was doing is he was sharing information that was secret, classified on who the referee crews were. He was sharing information on who the players that were injured. They keep that stuff close hold till right before the game because it gives the other team an advantage because the refs are also treated by the same docs, if you will, as the players, right? I thought I'm a probability guy. If everybody has the information, then no one has an advantage. So we just tell everybody who the crews are that morning. And I also would say the other thing is there's a video rule book. One of the things trying to train, not train, but make our fans aware of how the calls are made because not everybody thinks they play baseball. Not everybody thinks they played football, but everybody thinks they played basketball. So they think they know the rules. And so this video rule book is there to help educate the fans, if you will. The referees are educated, but players adapt. And so we have to find good video of violations so we can help the fans understand the game and so they don't complain as much because people don't trust officials. And so that if impacts the integrity of the game, and that was my focus. The integrity of the game. When we were wrong, say we were wrong. When we weren't, then stand up and say we were not.
I love that.
So west side of Chicago, grew up with your grandparents, developed in the most loving, endearing way a chip on your shoulder to fuel your motivation. Went into West Point, spent decades in the Army to retire as a 2-star general. Went into MBA operations. That comes to an end, and now you're in higher education at one of the most prestigious universities, public universities in the world. Who I get the fall magazine, and I'm blown away always by #1 best overall value, best career placement, best this, best that, incredible things. Like it's almost too incredible to believe, but it's true because the Princeton Review says so. And it also says that Georgia Tech is leading the way on space and aviation leadership and is investing $20 million in a national AI supercomputer called Nexus to accelerate scientific breakthroughs. I'm super proud to be part of that alumni community, as I know you are, but share with us how meaningful it's been to transition from the MBA into this university and make an impact on the student body and alumni.
It's absolutely incredible. I don't deserve to be on the administration of a place like Georgia Tech. I figured it'd be a community college, but there's a story behind that. My master plan, I left MBA. I was accepted to Stevens Tech, which is a private engineering school in Hoboken, New Jersey. I had the best plan in the world, and that was to get a PhD in sports analytics, be on ESPN, ABC TV, TNT, NBA TV, waxing eloquent about all the big sports competitions, showing fancy PowerPoint slides, and no one in the universe could debate it with me because I would have the only PhD in sports analytics. They're a private school. they were willing to do that for me. And I was on the way until one of our alum, Michael Tenenbaum, whose name appears on several locations on this campus, flew from California to New York. We met for breakfast, and he said, I would like for you to go back to Georgia Tech and lead my research center, which was the Tenenbaum Institute of Enterprise Transformation. I couldn't tell him no, so I did that. I get here, I'm at a football game. The chair of the industrial engineering school comes over, says, I've been looking for you, does some sort of Pope-like thing and says, you're now professor of the practice in the School of Industrial Engineering. I started teaching. I gave up the research center because we were slow to evolve it. It went into IPAT, which is an Institute for People and Technology, merged into that. I was so happy just being a professor in the classroom around these brilliant students, leading a couple clubs, Sports Business Club and the Millionaires in Training Club here at Georgia Tech. And then during COVID, I got introspective, and the only thing I had not done is I didn't have a terminal degree. And so somehow I got this bonehead of an idea. Now is the time to go ahead and do this, but I didn't want to do it online. I wanted to be in the classroom, debating and dialoguing with my classmates to be the best I could. So I applied to UGA. They have a great school of education. I knew they wasn't going to accept me because I'd done my research, and everyone that had been accepted into that doctoral program had a master's in education. I have a master's in strategic planning and a master's in industrial engineering and operations research. And my real plan, being genuine, was okay, I've done my part. If they don't accept me, that's it, I'm done. And they accepted me. And so here I am at the good old young age of 69 years old, walking across the stage in December 23, getting my doctoral degree. So then I get this doctoral degree, and I'm thinking, okay, I know the theory of higher ed leadership, but I wonder what it's really like. The current chief of staff at Georgia Tech left to go be a president at a university. The way the story's told is I was too late to raise my hand. The president had picked a person, and I thought, cool, just marching on. And then, like 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from the current chief of staff and said, don't know what's happened, but the president's changed his mind. Are you still interested? I said, yay, verily. Went through a process, and president called me one Monday night and said, I'm surprised you want to do this, but if you really, I'd be honored if you did. And so I've been the chief of staff to President Cabrera since June 2024. And that's why our football team is so good. And that's my story. And I'm not taking him back.
Oh, that's
No, it's
incredible.
been a wonderful ride. Of course, this year has been the most challenging year in the history of higher education, mainly because of a lot of the policy changes and things that are happening at the strategic level that none of us have control over. But in spite of it all, Georgia Tech continues to keep its eye on its mission to provide access to any students that are talented enough, keep our tuition low. So we're named the #1 ROI university in the country. We're number 3 on research, but number 1 and 2, and let's see, 4 through 25 all have medical schools. So literally we're the #1 research institution in the country without a medical school. So we're just, this place is just evolving and making a difference and transitioning in ways that we just got to do a better job of telling our story to others that are not our alum. And we're working on that very hard. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
Ron, every corner of your story exudes excellence. And I am so impressed. And Michael summed it up just a minute ago, from the military service to where you are right now as chief of staff. And you said yourself, young age of 69, you walk across the stage to get your doctorate. What drives you on every morning when you hear that alarm go off and you go to get out of bed? What's number one driving force in your life right now?
Yeah. So I'm a spiritual guy, not a religious guy. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm pretty jubilant. I'm not, in spite of what they might think, John, when you serve, you don't like jump out of bed, and I don't jump out of bed and go, hoorah, and you don't jump out of bed and go, hoorah. That bed feels really good. But when I take that first breath, I'm just thankful to be here. That's number one. And then number two, I have this 36-year-old mini me. His name's Ian Tyler Johnson. He's my son. And there's a part of me that thinks, and I don't even think about it, it's just embedded in my brain. Like my son's thinking, what would RJ do? He's pursuing his bachelor's degree. He'll graduate cybersecurity, I think, in the spring. He was a soldier too, medically discharged, got a TBI. I have my son back now. He's doing quite well. But that inspires me. And then the other thing is, as a leader, people are expecting me to do things in a way that allows them to be the best that they can be and allows our institution to accomplish its mission. So I think it's others and my spiritual being that inspires me. And I also love what I do. 93.7% of the time. It's that, there are things that happen because people are people. You don't want to deal with it, but you have to deal with it, and other things that are beyond our control. But that's small. That's small. I don't we can't be distracted by things, but we can't be unresponsive either, because that is what causes problems for any organization.
It's good.
Ron, none of us are getting any younger in life, and I've heard you mention your son a couple times, and I know John and I can certainly relate to how much we appreciate and love our family and little ones and how important they are. And a lot of what we do is selfishly, primarily for them. Like we're leaving something behind for them, but in a leadership position at any level, when you're a leader, you start to think about, how you want to be remembered, because we don't know what tomorrow brings. And you've touched on that a lot, and certainly your actions over the course of your amazing career have shown that. As we start to wind down the show, we always like to ask our guests if they could pass on any wisdom, share any practical advice for those either going through tough times, contemplating a second act, trying to figure out life. What is it that you would leave with them that they could take an action on and try to follow in some ways some of your footsteps?
Have no fear. And what I mean by that is, if there's something you think you want to do, then try to do it. I will say this. There's nothing I've ever done in my life that I regret. I'm no angel, but when you do stupid things and they don't turn out, you just go, whoa. You really don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. You just say, okay, I'm not doing that again. But the things that will get you, the things you will regret, are the things that you never got done. So at least try them. And if it's not working out, then pivot, go do something else. Like I was more than prepared to apply for that doctoral program and be rejected. There's a part of me that hoping I would, because that was a lot of hard work, but I fought my way through it. And so I would say, fear not. If it's something you want to do, then go after it. But you got to do some work. You can't just say that's what I want to do and then expect it to happen. You've got to do some work. Number two, I work out still. We all probably work out. You're not going to get stronger when you lift. Initially, the muscle's going to tear, you're going to feel weaker. And then if you maintain the right balance in nutrition and the workouts and taking care of your body, you'll gain that strength in those muscles. Life is like that. We always have ups and we have downs. Life isn't quite like the stock market, but it isn't not like the stock market. Unfortunately, some of us have to get sick to appreciate our health. And that's just the way life is. And you just got to embrace it like that. And the last thing I would say is show great respect for people. There's the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. But I have a platinum rule. And my platinum rule is treat others the way you want them to treat your mother. And
Oh,
if
I
people
like that.
did that, that 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 bears a lot of fruit and comes back with a bunch of dividends. That's my experience.
That's
I'm realizing how accurate that quote that I read this morning, when we first started the episode, how appropriate it was for this interview. And Ron, I have to say I'm blown away by your story. I'm blown away by your professionalism, by your excellence, by the way you live each day and live it for those that are around you, for your son and for the students that are looking up to you, because it's the people like you that create younger versions of you who said, I'm so glad that I had Ron Johnson to look up to when I was young and and a rocket without a rudder, but I had somebody leading me and guiding me, and that's why I am where I am today. And so, thank you for sharing that story with us. I'm almost speechless, but as my wife would say, that could never happen.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Yeah. There's no doubt our audience is going to take away something from the entirety of the story, but certainly from the parting advice, Ron. And I think you're pretty easy to find. But for those who want direction or a prescription on exactly where to find you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. I think if you just Google, not Ronald Johnson, because there's too many of those, and don't want to be one of those. But Major General Ronald Johnson, it'll pop up. I'm on LinkedIn. I used to be more active in posting about leadership. I'm not as active right now. But you could Google me and find me most wanted.
Thanks, Ron. This has been probably my favorite episode, and I'm probably a little biased because it's a Yellow Jacket to Yellow Jacket talking here. So go Jackets. I'm very thankful to Georgia Tech for allowing us to get connected and have this conversation. And it's been an honor sharing this hour with you and learning more about you.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks,
Michael.
Ron. Thanks, John. Yeah,
Amazing
incredible.
episode, man. Great
Yep.
job. And I'm jealous I'm not a Yellow Jacket, but it's a great story worth sharing. So
Absolutely.
let's get after it.
We'll get after it. See ya.
Okay.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballinger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out thesecondactmovement.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act Movement on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.